Hello folks, welcome to the latest installment on the 172nd Air Wing channel. I actually have to put this plug in now, but thank you for returning to watching my videos if you are an existing subscriber. And I also want to offer a thank you to the people who are tuning in for the first time. I am honestly overwhelmed at the level of support that you guys out there have shown for my videos and some of the content that I'm producing. So thank you for, once again, for tuning in. And with that stated, let's get right to it. Those of you who are returning to the channel are noticing that maybe we are, not maybe, but I am actually filming this from a little bit of a different perspective. We are now able to display our models from an airborne position, courtesy of Caliber Wings' particularly flexible router style stand. So let me know in the comments section if you prefer this format to my traditional viewpoint of filming these models in their ground-based landing gear down configuration as I've traditionally done. So with the changes now stated, let's get to the topic at hand, which is the third and final installment in my completely impromptu, but I think nevertheless worthwhile F-101B Voodoo trilogy series. This is the 416 Squadron. As you see on the tail slash there, this is the Lynx Squadron F-101B. This is an interceptor that served with the Royal Canadian Air Force, and in the colors, in this case, of one of their demo birds. HobbyMaster, as I understand it, has produced 3 demo version F-101s. This is one of them in, of course, the white Lynx Squadron colors. I believe there are 2 other ones in the Lynx Squadron demo bird series. There is a blue one and a black and red one as well. At this point, it is beyond a question about trying to complete the set for me, because right now these models are going for a stupendously high amount of money. Right now I think there's only one for sale on the entirety of eBay at the moment, and it's going for a round easy to afford sum of over $229. So yeah, that's not what I paid for this model. I ordered this for I think $149 like years and years ago, and even then I thought it was kind of expensive. Now that I've checked the prices recently, oof, holy buckets. So yeah, kind of a lot of money for these guys. And I do have to issue a disclaimer here. I did modify this model from its original configuration. I have mirrored the modifications I did on the U.S. Air Force F-101B Voodoo that I did a previous video on by adding a set of flaps. You might have noticed them in some of the montage footage there. And I've also removed the Genie missiles from this as well, because I'm a bit of a stickler for presenting my airplanes in a fashion similar to what they would have done in real life. And with this being a demo F-101, it's unlikely this aircraft would have stood alert with armed nuclear weapons on board. Those of you Voodoo fans out there, especially you Canadian Voodoo fans, if you know different, please let me know, because I, again, am a bit of a stickler for accuracy in my models. So if this aircraft did serve a live quick reaction force or quick reaction alert function, I would dearly love to know that. So please plug that into the comments if you know that this aircraft did serve in a frontline alert function, because then I can add the Genies, and well, I think it'd be an absolutely cool addition. But at this point, I'm just showing it in what it would have flown as back in 1984 when it flew demo operations for the 416 Squadron. I do want to plug in also that this aircraft can be seen on YouTube. There is a very good video made by somebody who did a VHS video of a Niagara Falls Air Show demo, and this exact aircraft, this particular aircraft, I mean in real life, was flown as part of that air show, I believe. So there's some close-up footage of this airplane in the flesh in 1987 that is absolutely cool to see, even if it is in somewhat grainy VHS analog quality. So do stop by that channel and stop by that video and check it out. If you search CF-101 demo, you'll probably pick it up on YouTube's search algorithm and you'll be able to see that video. You'll also see another one by the Warlocks Demonstration Squadron, which is an absolutely hilarious video. I'm not going to spoil it by mentioning what they do in there, but it is, I think, a fun piece of humor from the period. So if nothing else, it goes to show that Canadian pilots definitely have a robust sense of humor. At least they did in the 80s with the Voodoo squadrons. So this guy, let's get to the pertinent details at hand. This is the HobbyMaster CF-101, model number HA3713 in, of course, 1/72 scale. I'm going to pick up the F-101 story pretty much right after it was adopted by the U.S. Air Force in 1959. For those of you who are curious about the full history of the F-101, please check out my other videos that I have done in the 3-part series. The first two, the first one being on the F-101B and the second being the F-101B. So do check those videos out if you want to get a complete picture of the F-101's history. Out of respect for the people who have subscribed to the channel and have already probably seen those videos, I am not going to recount all of those again and end up boring anybody. So picking up the story from the adoption of the F-101B by the U.S. Air Force in 1959, the F-101B Interceptor was selected by Canada after the Avro Aero was canceled in 1959. And I'm going to take a moment here and offer my sincere condolences to the Canadian aviation fans, because it seems like your country just gets a really bad end of things when it comes to the subject of air power and aviation in general. Recently, just to check the box on our obligatory tangent in these videos, recently the Canadian developed Bombardier airliner, the name of course naturally would escape me at the moment, but it's currently known as the Airbus A220. It's known as the Airbus A220 because the Bombardier commuter airline, or not commuter airline, but the commuter aircraft was developed by Bombardier in Canada, and then basically right when the airplane was completed, Airbus of Europe swooped in and bought the whole program for what basically amounted to a fire sale. And then the first thing that they did was basically scratch off the insignia and the Bombardier logos and basically everything and stamped Airbus all over it, which I'm sure had to leave a bad taste in the mouths of everybody in Canada who had a contribution to that project. And it didn't help that the previous presidential administration put an amazingly absurd 220% tariff on that particular airliner as well, which was actually not Boeing's idea. That's one of the interesting things about that story. Basically, Boeing had sued to keep the Bombardier airliner from competing with existing offerings in the United States. The accusation was that they were selling it for below cost. And usually in those kind of cases, the court will apply a tax on the airplane to offset the cost savings. So if they're selling the aircraft below cost, the tax would just bring the price of the airplane to the minimum cost. This is done kind of routinely in commercial law to prevent companies from just trying to put out other competitors out of business by selling their products at a loss, because if a company does that, then they can drive competitors out of business because an existing company has a lot more money saved up than a newcomer. So if an established company comes in and they see competitors, they can sell their product at a loss and then absorb the loss because they have more money saved up. And since the new competitor doesn't have that kind of revenue stream, they end up going out of business, and the existing company then raises their prices again. So the idea is to prevent dumping as an anti-competitive, anti-consumer measure. And usually when this happens, of course, as I mentioned, the taxes assessed will go to bring the price up to what it would be if they sold it at cost. Well, in this case, for some reason, Washington, D.C. decided to increase the price of the aircraft by 220%, which was not even an amount that Boeing suggested. So, yeah, that didn't really help the situation for Canadian aerospace. And it was basically something similar to this in the 1950s. In 1959, the Canadian aerospace establishment had created the Avro Aero, which was, by any objective measurement, an amazing composition of an airplane. It was Mach 2 delta winged interceptor, very cool aircraft, and it would have been, I think, a really competitive design in terms of being a really quality interceptor. And then, for reasons that still are unclear even today, the Canadian Prime Minister abruptly canceled the project after it was done. So yeah, definitely not the best moment for Canadian aerospace, and definitely something that has still left a bad taste in Canadian aircraft fans even today. There's still people now who talk about their family members who worked on the Avro Aero project and how they basically just got canned and lost their jobs and all their progress basically overnight. And again, the reasons for why that happened are kind of opaque, historically speaking. So that was kind of a heartbreaking thing to see when I researched the history of the CF-101 to see, how the Avro Aero got knocked off of contention by the sudden decision of the Royal Canadian government. But the decision to cancel the Avro Aero represented as somewhat of an opportunity for McDonnell, at that time McDonnell Douglas, because now the Canadian government needed an interceptor pretty much overnight, and the F-101 had just been accepted into U.S. Air Force service that year. So in June 1961, 6 U.S. Air Force Voodoos are sold to the Canadian Air Force, basically right off of the U.S. Air Force stock. And as time went on, the Canadian Air Force brought more of them to replace the CF-101 Canuck. Now, it should be noted, the CF-101 Canuck is not to be confused with the I mistake that. That was a CF-100 Canuck, which should not be confused with the F-100 Super Sabre, which is a completely different airplane. So the CF-100 Canuck was a straight-winged early jet age interceptor, which was, of course, completely outclassed by the modern, at the time, Russian designs like the Tu-95 Bear. So going from the straight-winged CF-100 Canuck to this CF-101 Voodoo was a major step up, kind of in the same respect of the F-101B taking over from the F-84, which itself was a straight-winged interceptor in U.S. Air Force service. So the F-101 Voodoos here served with distinction from 1961 all the way to 1987, which is a very long service stretch for an aircraft of these roles, and they did a really good job of guarding the far northern reaches of the North American continent from Russian bombers, which would do practice interceptions. They even did operations to the east, even sometimes going as far as Iceland to complete intercepts. So what they would do is these F-101Bs would fly from Canada, land at, I almost said Incirlik, but I meant to say Reykjavik in Iceland, and they would stage out of Reykjavik Air Base, waiting for the Russian bombers to come close to the North American continent, at which point then the F-101Bs would then launch on quick reaction alert to intercept and meet those Russian aircraft approaching the North American continent. So definitely an important job, but one that doesn't really get a lot of, I guess, public credit, right? Because everybody wants to see aircraft that are, air-to-air fighters, or they did like a really amazing air-to-ground mission, like the F-16s that were flown during the Osirak raid on Iran, or Iraq, I should say. Those kind of things, right? People don't really want to see airplanes that are nevertheless brave, but don't necessarily do like a loud or really kind of noteworthy mission, right? So the F-101s kind of labored in obscurity, but their mission was extraordinarily important because they were the quick reaction force to keep Russian bombers from just basically coming to the North American continent unimpeded. So definitely an important job, definitely a thankless job, because naturally the nature of their job meant that they would intercept airplanes far away from a home, and besides taking some intelligence pictures of the latest and greatest Russian aircraft, they really didn't take any kinetic actions against aircraft, which is a good thing, because if these aircraft were launching nuclear air-to-air missiles to safeguard the northern reaches of North America, it would be a very bad day for civilization and for a lot of people. So Good thing that these aircraft never had to be used in a military capacity, and they retired with distinction in April of 1987. So let's talk about this particular model. This is HobbyMaster's interpretation. As it so happens, I believe this is the only F-101 diecast model on, not just on display, but available anywhere. So they kind of have a monopoly, but the good thing is HobbyMaster hasn't really taken advantage of that in releasing something that's half-baked. They've done a really good job of modeling the details. I had a chance to look at a real-life F-101 Voodoo at the Strategic Air Command Museum, and it's a really big airplane. It's hard for me to capture the scale of it, but it's pretty massive. This thing is longer than a healthily sized regional jet, and you know, it's a big bird. So, and it reflects that when you look at the model. When you unpack it, it's pretty long. The only aircraft in my collection that's longer than this is the F-111F that you can probably see in one of my earlier videos that I did on this channel. So it's a big bird. You got the accurately modeled pitot tube right here with the striping, the kind of the barbershop pole deal configuration here. It also has the infrared sight and track here as well. You also have kind of the dielectric panel modeling right here with the gold paint. And I have to say that the two sets of missiles that you get in the rotating belly area here, which does move. I'm not going to move it too much here because it's on obviously it's on the caliber wing stand, and this is a HobbyMaster model which is designed for a different kind of stand, so I'm not going to mess with it too much on camera. But yeah, this has a rotating weapons bay just like the actual airplane. One side you get a set of Genie AIR-2 missiles like what you would see here. Trying to get this in focus. So you get a pair of those, two of those. Then you also get a pair of AIM-4 Falcons. Let me see if I can get this guy in the frame. So you get a pair of those too. So definitely well equipped in terms of having an accurate war mission certified loadout. Again, I removed these because I wanted to reflect the airplane in its real world mission, which would have been a demo aircraft. So again, it wouldn't have been armed while it was doing air show demos in the mid 1980s. So yeah, definitely a really nicely detailed model. I did add flaps to it with the paint being red in the back of the flaps, so that way I could model it with the landing gear on and the flaps down, which I think is a really cool look for the F-101s. I've also done that on my US Air Force one too, so definitely check out some details on the mod there if you want to know how I did it. The cockpit is displayed. You can display the cockpit with it open, but if you want to show it at a realistic 30-something degree angle, be advised that sometimes it may drop down on its own. It's not a big deal, but do be aware of that. There's also a couple of antennas in the back of the model right here. You may have noticed in one of the montage footage that one of them had broken off because if you handle the model back there, they're very easy to come out. So if you do happen to get one of these, be advised that when you handle it in the back, it's going to be a bit sensitive. So yeah, other than that niggling concern with the antennas in the back and the cockpit, it's actually a really well done model. So I'm glad to have it in my collection, and I'm kind of glad that I bought it. I ordered it because I was kind of in this phase of, well, actually what happened is I wound up ordering it because I almost broke my US Air Force one, meaning the Interceptor one, not the Recon version. But the Interceptor Voodoo, I had dropped it because of some issue involving my TV remote landing on my display area. So because of the damage to that model, I thought, man, it's going to be broken. I just better get another one. So I happened to order this one, and now that I have it in my collection, I've come to appreciate it a lot more, especially in context of the history of this aircraft and how it performed as a demo bird, and the fact that you can see it on YouTube when it was in service, which is absolutely amazing. Makes you wonder how amazing YouTube would have been if we had had this back in the 80s, right? So with all that being said, if you can get a hold of this at a reasonable price, I do highly recommend it. However, I have to be honest, at this point, reasonable has probably left the building. With this model selling for over $200 on eBay at the time of this video, yeah, I kind of don't blame you guys out there if you don't want to buy it because of how expensive it is. So maybe HobbyMaster will release another Canadian CF-101 in some other color scheme, or they may re-release this one. I don't know. But I do want to say that if you do happen to be on the fence about ordering a HobbyMaster Canadian Air Force Voodoo, I highly recommend picking them up, because if you have a doubt about whether or not you're going to keep it, you can easily turn it around and sell it for a lot of money, clearly. So if you don't like it when you get it, you're not out really a lot of issues, because you can probably recoup your cost frightfully easy. So for me, I happen to love this one. It's in the collection, and as far as I'm concerned, it's in the collection to stay. So with that point established, I'm glad to have it. It's a beautiful model. The pitot tubes are accurately modeled. The vents are accurately modeled. They even got the air conditioning vent right on this side. If you look at the montage footage, you'll see that there is not a scoop on the left side of the aircraft, which is reflective of reality, because on the US Air Force ones, they put a little scoop on the bottom nose of the aircraft. That's the place where the environmental control system, aka the air conditioner, takes in incoming air. On these old school F-101s, and really any old school Air Force airplane, back in the 50s, the aircraft had to be moving forward in order to accept compressed air, which would then charge the air conditioning, which is why you see a lot of F-4s and F-100s in Vietnam with the canopies open when they were taxiing, because the air conditioner didn't actually work until the airplane was moving forward almost at takeoff speed. So because of this, the US Air Force Voodoos had the little scoop that went into the airstream, because they found that in hot environments, the original F-101Bs did not generate enough airflow to keep the air conditioner going, which is not fun when you're sitting in the hot sun in the southern United States and you're scrambling on a interception run. So the US Air Force ones have a little scoop that goes out here in order to get more air into the air conditioner. Obviously, Canadian Voodoos didn't have that problem, because being in Canada, humidity and high heat and tropical weather was not really a concern. So these aircraft did not feature that scoop because they didn't need it, and HobbyMaster accurately captured that in this aircraft. So thumbs up for them on getting the small details correct on it, and it's one of the reasons why I'm really happy to have it in my collection. So if you happen to snag one of these at a good price, or they re-release these in a different or a new model run, definitely pick them up, because they look really amazing, especially when they're pictured in flight. So thank you for watching to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. That way I know that I'm putting out good videos. And please use the comment section below to add any tips or thoughts or advice on what you think of the CF-101s. And I'd be curious to hear from the comments how many people have got family or relatives that served back in the day that can talk about what it was like to work on and even potentially fly this aircraft. So I'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts on that. And thank you again for liking and subscribing if you have already. And thank you for watching this video. Have a good one.